counterparts on other MSc and MA programs. So some of their students can also join us from management and finance, supply chain, and HR.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's 1 o'clock. I'm going to start the session, but by welcoming Deepa, thank you so much for making time today. One thing that came to my mind when I was reviewing your work was something that Napoleon Bonaparte said, that a leader is a dealer in hope. And there's something else that I read recently, which is from Martin Luther King Jr., said that the ultimate measure of a leader is not where they stand in moments of comfort, but where they stand at times of uncertainty, challenge, and controversy. I think that really goes well with the summary of your talk. I'm sure there'll be more than what I've just said, but it's just so timely and contextual. If some of our students are reading The Economist, the Financial Times, and many other sources where they keep up with the world events. So I'm just going to mute this participant just to make sure that there's only one person talking at a time. Okay. Irshad Ali, please, could you mute yourself?
Yeah, I think he's done that.
Okay. Right. So I haven't lost my train of thoughts just yet, but it is quite timely and contextual, and we are aware of the circumstances that we currently live in. You've got so many challenges globally, geopolitical, organizational. You've got the Sustainable Development Goals, simultaneously trying to improve our lives and the way we live, who we are, who we can become, and so on. So just a brief introduction again to Deepa. You have read my email, most of the participants here. So Deepa is the director of the RCN Foundation, which is a national grant-making charity supporting nursing and midwifery staff to improve patient care. Deepa has over 30 years of experience working in the public and not-for-profit sector, including 18 years as a chief executive. Her experience spans leadership across a broad range of disciplines, including operations, fundraising, communications, and marketing, along with grant making, of course. So she's also the vice chair of the board at the University of Winchester. So once again, Deepa, welcome today. Thanks for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Rick. Thank you. And thank you for that really kind introduction, and also actually for the context, which I think is really, really helpful. I'm going to take you, this is an hour. I would like you to ask questions, and I'm not sure how we're going to do it during. I won't be able to see you with hands up or anything, but I'm really happy to do it either at the end or perhaps if I go through what I'm going, the comments, if you keep your questions for the end, there will be some time for questions, because I'd love a conversation with all of you, and that's what I think that we should be doing. So this is a really whistle-stop tour of authentic leadership, and also although it's based, and it should be absolutely rightly, because you're all MBA students, it's based on the academic literature in this field, but also it's rooted very much in my lived experience of what I feel I bring as an authentic leader. So I'm going to, without further ado, if that's going to work. No, hold on a sec. Here we are. So you've introduced me. I'm not going to go through that again. What I will add though, is that although I've worked extensively in the not-for-profit and public sectors, actually my interaction with the commercial sector has been quite significant through those organisations that I've worked with as well. So I've got a really nice broad experience, which hopefully you will be able to see, and hopefully I can bring out here. So I'm going to kick off really with, what do we mean by authentic leadership? So the first half really of this presentation is really rooted in the, as I say, in the academic literature. So I'm going to just kind of run through some of the things that happen and then come on to my experiences. So authentic leadership really refers to a style of leading that emphasizes genuineness, integrity, and transparency. And it focuses on a leader's self-knowledge and adherence to core values. At its foundation, this approach involves a deep understanding of one's motivation, strengths and limitations, driving behaviour that remains consistent regardless of external pressures. We know that there are always external pressures. I think what we can't control those, but we can control is our response to those. And I think that's where authentic leadership has a really important role to play. So authentic leaders act in alignment with their inner moral compass, which contributes to a sense of credibility and trustworthiness amongst followers. And the concept is rooted in positive organisational behaviour, emphasising the value of fostering meaningful relationships and a supportive work climate. So I'm going to say more about that in a bit. Examples in practice include leaders who openly share their decision-making processes, who admit mistakes, that's very difficult, I know, and challenging, rather than conceal them, and those who cultivate environments where diverse viewpoints are actively welcomed. Authentic leadership gain prominence through the work of academics such as Avolio and Gardner. And at the end of this presentation, I've set out some references so you can look into this a bit further as part of your own studies and learning. And they highlighted its role in improving psychological well-being and strengthening ethical climates within organisations. So in sectors like mine, in healthcare, social impact, charities, authentic leadership is particularly valued because it aligns closely with our missions as organisations. And it's centred on concepts of compassion, trust and service. And I'll come back to compassion a little bit later in this presentation. So when leaders embody authenticity, organisations often benefit from higher levels of engagement and a stronger sense of collective purpose. And furthermore, authentic leadership isn't performative. It's not performative. It isn't about projecting an image of honesty, but rather living in accordance with your own values and in ways that are observable and consistent. So in summary, authentic leadership is defined not simply as what leaders do, but who they are, how they understand themselves, and how consistently they act with integrity in all circumstances. But why does it matter? Why does authentic leadership matter? Well, it matters because it builds trust and psychological safety. It stems from, that's the first thing, it stems from the way authentic leaders influence trust, morale, and long-term performance within their teams. And when employees perceive their leaders as genuine, transparent, and values-driven, they're more likely to feel psychologically safe, which has been shown to enhance learning, innovation, and communication. So psychological safety is critical, and you know that a key role of an authentic leader is to foster an environment where trust and psychological safety are paramount. But equally, it's also about communicating that with their teams. It also enhances employee well-being. Empathy and fairness from authentic leaders has been shown in terms of evidence base to reduce burnout and increase job satisfaction among employees. What you, I'm sure, know and have heard before, and this is a true adage that I can attest to throughout my career, is that people don't leave organisations, they leave their managers and leaders. So I think that's where authentic leadership is so important in terms of employee well-being. It strengthens organisational culture. Culture, as you know, eats strategy for breakfast. You could have the most well set out strategy, you could have lots of KPIs in place, you could have a really high performing organisation. If the culture isn't right, none of it works. So honesty, transparency is important from leaders, and it creates a cohesive ethical work culture, fostering an open idea sharing. And I think that's really important. And finally, it's important because it provides leadership stability in crisis. We're seeing at the moment, dare I say this, lots of examples of strong leadership, but not authentic leadership, I think, around the world. We are in a period of real uncertainty and division, and you know, we're in the middle of a situation of a a war by choice. And so actually that set lots of it has created, I think, an atmosphere more globally of uncertainty and crisis. And so providing stability, authentic leadership during that time gives that sense of stability and effective navigation. So that's the I mean, I've touched on the environment that we're in at the moment, but really I want to look at it, why it matters even more in a VUCA world. So you will have Rick, thank you so much for sharing that information about VUCA, the article that you did. And just to be clear, when we talk about a VUCA world, we're talking about a world which is mired in volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That's the world we're living in at this moment. And the only certainty is that this VUCA world will continue and that change will continue. And so I think there's something about we as leaders, how do we navigate that? So it's important because it provides the human grounding, trust and clarity that environments of rapid change and instability lack. Especially relevant, and it's especially relevant for leaders operating in mission-driven, high-stakes contexts. Authenticity builds trust when everything else feels unstable, and clear values cut through complexity. Authentic leaders communicate honestly, and this is really critical in times of ambiguity and uncertainty. And you've seen that around the world where we're not seeing leaders communicate honestly, and that creates even more uncertainty. People follow authentic leaders because they feel connected. And so I've put in simple terms at the bottom, VUCA shakes confidence, authentic leadership restores it. That for me is the takeaway from this session. So it creates trust, clarity and stability that people desperately need when the environment can't provide it. So on to my next slide. What are the behaviours? So a few things around the behaviours of authentic leaders. We're seeing authentic leaders consistently demonstrating behaviours that reflect their values, prioritise integrity and cultivate trust within their teams. You're going to hear me say the same words in the next few slides, because actually I think it's important, and I think that's, so things like trust, things like integrity, and values, you will hear that again and again, because I think these are the underpinning value, the underpinning principles for authentic leadership. So one hallmark behaviour is purpose-driven action, which is that authentic leaders stay grounded in their mission and articulate it clearly to others, creating a sense of shared direction. They also demonstrate empathy and support by actively listening to the needs and experiences of their team members, and actually also acknowledging any challenges and providing support when it's necessary. The third set of behaviours are consistency and integrity, and this is really a defining characteristic. I think consistency has to be one of the key principles underlining authentic leadership, and authentic leadership leaders align their words to their actions across different situations, and this really reinforces to those that are following them or those that are part of their team, that they have confidence in the reliability of their leaders. Courage and humility, that these are sound simple, very difficult, I think, particularly when you're faced with real, you're in this real VUCA context of volatility. Courage and humility are absolutely key. So the leaders actually admitting mistakes, engaging in self-reflection and viewing themselves as continuous learners sends a really strong message that actually these are authentic leaders. So how do we put it into action? Well, I'm encouraging open feedback. Not as easy as it sounds, because, there's sometimes a fear about not wanting to hear some difficult feedback. about the organisation, about your leadership style, all of that. I think it's important that authentic leaders foster open feedback loops, inviting team members to share their ideas without judgment. I think it's easier said than done. I'll be frank with you, but I think that there are ways to start doing it in small ways that are testing and putting putting your toe in the water about how we do this. I think what you'll find is people don't want to give feedback that is necessarily negative, not in all cases. What they want to do is have an opportunity to have their say and to feel that they are being heard. And I think that's a really important part of encouraging open feedback. Acknowledging mistakes transparently, again, not easy, but what it does is build credibility, and it demonstrates humility and accountability. I think demonstrating that you are as vulnerable as a leader as anyone else, I think, is very powerful. It's a very powerful message to send to your team, and it's an important part of what we are as authentic leaders. So active listening and fair decision making are really, really important, and I think that's sort of speaks for itself. And none of these are in isolation; they're all interrelated. All of these four facets, and then modelling resilience and safe dialogue. Authentic leaders model resilience and emotional regulation, especially in very high pressure environments. We've all used to working in high pressure environments full of stress, but managing stress effectively and maintaining composure provides the stability that teams need. So creating safe spaces for difficult conversation is really, really important. And authentic leaders encourage dialogue on challenges, conflicts, or uncertainties, and they guide those discussions constructively. That's part of their role, is to help navigate some of these really tricky and challenging discussions. The point of this is that organisations that foster these behaviours report higher engagement levels, improved communication, and enhanced morale. So it has an impact on organisation well-being as a whole. But how can we sustain authentic leadership? Oh, that's wrong. There's a number of things, although it sounds terribly, it can sound a bit esoteric, and it can sound as if it's just about principles, but there are really practical ways that we can develop it and sustain it in our practice as leaders. So the first thing is goal setting and reflection. Sustaining authentic leadership over time requires goal setting, consistent reflection, and systems of accountability. Leaders benefit from identifying one or two key behaviours to develop or strengthen, such as improving transparency in decision-making or enhancing listening skills. These are really, really important. Find something where it is a goal that you need to try and address in your organisation. Establishing a structured weekly reflection practice is something that you can set up, and it helps reinforce learning. Open communication, so regular listening sessions, open communication, understanding of organisational needs, really important. So again, communication is a key theme. Communication, listening, trust, all of these are key themes that keep coming up again and again and again. And I hope that gives you a sense of what's really at the heart of authentic leadership. Developing a values-led decision-making framework is really important. It helps leaders to remain consistent in their ethical stance, even when external pressures arise. So we've all been in situations where we are sometimes pressured to try and take a particular stance or to take a particular decision. I think decision-making led by values is absolutely fundamental to authentic leadership. Accountability and support are crucial as well, finally, to sustaining authentic leadership, and using colleagues, mentors, or coaches can be a useful way of doing that. So that's a bit of a whistle stop through the academic literature and some of the things that are putting into practice, using that academic literature to kind of convey to you that how we could put this in authentic leadership into practice. So just a little bit about what's been happening at what I've been doing at the RCN Foundation, and how it works at the RCN Foundation. So I think for me, it's about leading with compassion and integrity in supporting nursing and midwifery. Now, that's something that is about living the values of my charity. We have some very strong values. And I think the way somebody once described this to me, which has always stayed with me throughout my career, is that we have values that that are organisational. So we have a set of organisational values, but how do we translate those as individuals into how we deal with our staff and our beneficiaries or our customers and clients? It's about living those values and finding tangible examples of how you can deliver that in your day-to-day work. So being grounded in values is absolutely central to the Foundation's mission. And its transparency and its impact. Transparency is really, really key. We've seen lots of examples in recent days of transparency not being something adhered to in the news. We're seeing it all the time. Actually, it fosters a real sense of trust, and I think that's really important. So going on to trust, we ensure that those we support experience trust, dignity, and respect. If that's the focus of externally, it's got to also be the focus internally. That if we expect our beneficiaries, our customers, our clients, our stakeholders, if we want to ensure their experience of us is one of trust, dignity, and respect, we've also got to show that to our team members so that they see that we're living those values as well. Authentic leadership has also supported my foundation's reputation as a trusted grant maker and sector leader. We've really grown that sense of who we are, what we do, and how we do it. That's really important. And it's strengthened our relationship with donors, beneficiaries, and our RCN partners. It really has. We are attracting, many more donors to the work that we do because we've been open about what works. We've also been open about what doesn't work. So I think that's really important. And I remember during COVID, a particular corporate approaching the foundation, and we asked, and they wanted to give us a donation, a significant donation, 6 figures, to support nursing staff. And we said to them, why have you come to us? Which is what we do ask at major donors. Why choose the foundation? And they said that they had looked at our website and they'd looked at another charity's website, which was even bigger than ours. And what they could see very clearly is in terms of transparency, is where the money that we received went, where it was given. We were transparent about what we did with that money, how we used it. The other charity was not, so it was an easy decision for them. So I think that's where you start to see the benefit and the value of authentic leadership. But also building a culture of psychological safety is something that we've worked really hard on within, and actually it is, I think, conversely and counterintuitively, it's harder within a smaller team than a bigger organisation. In a smaller team, it's easy to be found out, and I think, or to feel that you've been found out. And I think that this is not to say that we haven't had discussions which are difficult with our staff. We have had difficult discussions, and I think one of the things that underpins everything in all of this is about compassionate leadership, which is sometimes conflated with authentic leadership. So authentic leaders lead with compassion, but this is not a soft skill. I would argue it's actually a really hard skill. It's not about weakness. Research has shown that 80% of leaders misunderstand what compassion means, and it's seen as somehow being soft. And I would argue that authentic leadership is seen is viewed in that way as well. Actually, leading in this way requires great courage and strength. And I think some of the things I've said earlier you can see that actually you really have to almost take a deep breath and jump in into something that is often quite difficult and full of fear for yourself. But it's about doing hard things in a human way. So it's about addressing, poor performance or conflicts with empathy and fairness. It's not about avoiding them. It's about leaning into difficulties rather than shying away. And we've done that, for example, in our discussions at the foundation about performance. Performance can be very difficult to have a discussion about. It's often seen as very pejorative. Actually, we've tried to create an environment where performance discussions are undertaken in a way that is A, psychologically safe, and B, very constructive and useful. And what we've actually found is often the staff that we're having these discussions with welcome our intervention and welcome the fact that we're having these conversations in this way, because it gives them an opportunity to kind of air anything that they feel worried about as well. So you're creating these safe spaces. So modelling this at the RCN Foundation has been very much about setting a tone of openness and authenticity across my organisation. It's about role modelling calm, values-aligned leadership during sector challenges. Now, that can be challenging. Healthcare is in absolute turmoil more often than not. Equally, my charity operates alongside a bigger sister organisation called the Royal College of Nursing, which itself is a trade union. When you're a charity aligned in that way, you have to navigate the challenges that the bigger organisation throws in. So I think that's something that, role modelling that calm, values-assigned leadership is really, really important. It's also helped me to bring clarity of purpose and strategic vision for the foundation, and that's really, I think, was demonstrated when I wrote the last strategy, which we're in the middle of at the moment, which actually was a strategy that I co-produced, not just with our beneficiaries, but also with our staff. And our staff surveys have consistently rated the fact that we have a very clear strategy and the fact that we communicate about it consistently as scoring very highly in the staff surveys of foundation staff. We have created an environment where team members feel seen, supported and empowered, and we promote a culture of learning, reflection and continuous improvement. So in daily practice, this is, for example, it means, for example, being transparent and regular and having transparent, regular communication with my staff, with my trustees and with my stakeholders. It's something I know from the feedback that we get that they value and that they would welcome consistently. It's also about acknowledging pressures. We're not operating in a vacuum, we're operating in a VUCA world and we're operating in a VUCA environment. You've got to acknowledge that that is having an impact on the work that we do. Sometimes we're going to have to pivot, but actually explaining why we pivot and what it's in response to is really, really is key. Taking a balanced and evidence-informed approach to funding decisions, so people can see why we've reached the decisions that we have. I see so many examples with other grant makers of this not happening, and I think this is it's challenging. And then championing equity and access in all our grant making processes. This is really how we've lived, and I've lived, authentic leadership. Last couple of slides from me before we leave some time for some questions. So how authentic leadership has enhanced the Foundation's mission. It's ensured that our funding decisions reflect compassion and integrity. Saying no as a funder is really, really hard because practically everything could benefit, is fantastic and will benefit nursing and midwifery staff. I mean, it's really hard to say no to some fantastic things, but actually doing it with kindness and compassion and integrity and clarity is really important so that people understand where that no is coming from. Building trust with donors, has encouraged sustained investment in the profession, and I gave you the example of it earlier of the donor that came to us and why they came to us, and I think that's, having open and honest discussions with them is important. Strengthening it strengthens credibility, has strengthened credibility with our applicants and our partners. So we consistently have feedback about, you know, why we're seen as a go-to funder in this space. And then finally, promoting a culture of learning, reflection and continuous improvement has really benefited, I think, the charity. We've learned so much from that. And actually, that's not just at senior levels, that pervades right throughout the organisation. Right, last slide from me. And this is really about how it's made a positive impact on the foundation. And you'll see again some of the same language I've used because I think it's so important. And it underpins authentic leadership, but it's focusing on fairness, transparency and impact, and that's created a very strong alignment around our mission and values. As a charity, that's really important. And actually, personally, for me, that's really important because I think that unless you are aligned with the mission and values of your organisation, it makes it very difficult to articulate the benefits of that organisation, the value of that organisation to external stakeholders and to the outside world. Ensuring that principles of trust, dignity and respect are underpin everything that we do. And it's about who we support, but also not externally, but also about members of our team. And it's led to greater ownership and autonomy within a small team. I cannot tell you how wonderful it is to hear new ideas from some of our staff about different ways of doing things. They've tried something. That tells me that we are creating a culture where this is able to happen. We've seen improved collaboration with external stakeholders and partners. We've seen external stakeholders and partners approach us to talk about, you know, how we can work together for the betterment of nursing and midwifery, and that's a really positive thing. Authentic leadership has also been, you know, in terms of is also about leading with compassion and integrity, and it's also led to enhanced well-being. That's another area where we get consistently high scores from our team, and I'm really pleased about that. That wasn't always the case. And it's something that we've had to work hard on, but consistently on as well, to make sure we don't forget that well-being actually has a positive impact on performance. And finally, I think it's about having had a reputation. It's having a reputation. It's built our reputation in the sector as a trusted grant maker with integrity and impact at the heart of our decision making. So that's where I think I see us now as a charity and a grant maker. But I think there's always work to do, and I think that authentic leadership as a basis and a foundation is a very good way of continuing with that. So here are some references. And I am going to stop sharing so that I can answer any questions that anybody may have. So Rick, shall I leave the questions? Do you want to facilitate that?
May I just thank you first, Deepa. I think that was rich. That was I think there was a lot there. There was a lot there. I mean, it's not just about the different kinds of leadership, but also I think for the audience, we'll open up the floor to questions shortly. But I was taking down some notes just to lay out the map of the essence today. I think most of the content that you covered today, it could lead to some deep level discussions about trust, ethics, and leadership legitimacy, broadly speaking. But if I had to categorize some of the things that you covered, this is more for the audience. I think you looked a lot on the importance of leaders being self-aware during crisis. You touched briefly on authentic leadership and compassionate leadership. And I was attending a session, this is a couple of weeks ago, CIPD conference, where I sensed they were being used as semantics. They're not the same. So I think there's a bit of clarity that we all would benefit from. So that was a really important point that you made. You also looked at the importance of transparency and trust. Importantly, we reviewed values versus survival, how values-informed organizations and leaders need to be, decision-making under pressure, reflection and learning, which is a continuous process. One thing I have to say, I mean, the industry context that we had today is particularly important because we do not have, and I'm saying this as somebody who is leading an MBA program, we do not use enough cases from the not-for-profit and not-profit sectors, and there's a difference between the two as well. So this was, this elucidated some of the peculiarities and considerations that we need to make when we try to understand the not-for-profit sector more in general. But I think there was a lot there, and I hope that some of my students today will have questions, different things that they picked up from the talk. And again, this is my message to the students. This is an open conversation. So if there are examples that you'd like to share from your experience, some things that you would like to find out more about from today's talk, any concept or examples, please either, I mean, the best thing to do is unmute yourself, talk to us, okay, or drop your comments, reflections on the chat, and we can start. I've got some questions, but I'm going to save it till the end. I'm going to open the floor to questions. But thank you again, Deepa. That was
thank you.
Very enriching. Over to you, students. Okay, there's a student who's joining now. It's a little late, but I'll let you in. Okay. I want to ask Parth because he usually always makes a comment or asks a questions. Parth,
I'm just taking a note. I'm just taking a note of something and trying to frame it. I'll come back to you in just 30 seconds.
30 seconds. All right. Okay.
Oh, that's quick.
Good.
Some quick thinking going on with Parth.
Bishwant is one of our executive MBA students. Usually has a question.
Yes.
So, hi, Bishwant. There you are.
Yes. Hi, Rick. Hi, Aldrin. Hi, Deepa.
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. So, regarding this particular leadership that you have spoken, like in a situations where we're going to take a decision where it's going to affect a different stakeholders or the clients. So how do we get into that in a ways? How do we take in which sides?
So is this about if you have a challenging situation where you need to take sides? Is that the question?
Yes. Yes.
And how do you navigate that?
Yes.
I mean, I think first of all, my advice would be you don't think about it. You frame it differently. You frame it not as taking sides, but you frame it as, what is it that we are faced with what is the challenge that we are all faced with? And actually, if we start with that, and if we start with what is it we're trying to overcome, then actually both sides, if you want to look at it sides, both sides, I think, will have a different thing that they want to achieve. But actually somewhere in there, hopefully, it's about trying to find, you as a leader have in terms of navigating that, is to have to find the common ground. You absolutely have to find the common ground, because, that is something that that as a leader, you're constantly having to do in terms of bringing people to a place where there is something that there's beneficial for both parties, but equally where both parties can see that it's not going to be one way or another. And actually, the other part of it is being very evidence-based in whatever you decide to do. I think that's critical. That takes looking at processes, looking at evidence, looking at all of that, and not focusing on people and individuals. That's something that I think sometimes takes the heat out of a situation, and that's how I would suggest that's how that's dealt with.
Because the only reason is because as the present situation with the worker world, what's happening. So there's going to be a lot of conflicts between the stakeholders or the clients that we get through.
Yeah.
That is where we need to make them calm or let them get some assured.
I think Vishwant, I think there's also something about giving people the space to have those conversations with you and to feel that they've been listened to. And I think that's not an easy thing. It's not at all an easy thing. I have a situation at the moment where I'm having lots of pressure put on myself and my foundation about spending more money, you know, because nursing staff are facing such a critical time. Now, for me, that's a difficult conversation to manage because it's multiple stakeholders saying that, and actually for me, it's about being very clear myself about why I'm taking the position I'm taking. B, making sure that it's really backed up by evidence. And then C, communicating that clearly, making sure, and simply. The communication part is the hardest, if I'm honest, because not everybody will understand. You know, I mean, I'm going to talk about myself. I'm not there to make friends with everybody. That's not my job.
Can't satisfy everyone.
Interests of my organisation, and if the best way of doing that is by coming up with an evidence-based solution, then I have to feel that that's the right thing to do. So that's all you can do in those very difficult and challenging situations. I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, shall we go to Netila next? Netila has her hands raised. And then after that, we'll move to Parth. Thank you, Bishwant. It's a good question and really good perspective.
Hi, Deepa.
Hi,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this session. Very insightful. Hi, Rick. I wanted to ask a very practical question, and I hope it's not a silly question. I know everyone
nothing
says
is a silly question.
Yes,
but nothing is a silly question.
I will give you an example, and I would love to understand what does an authentic leader looks like in a situation like this. We have a team of people with people that are not all high performers, but we have those high performers that can be dragged down and get their passion and their energy down because they can see that others in the team are receiving exactly the same salary, are getting exactly the same treatment as a person that is a high performer, but then nothing is happening. How does an authentic or compassionate leader deal with this?
Very good question, actually. That's a very, very good. And it's a question that it doesn't matter what sector you're in. We've all faced it. We've all faced people that don't perform. And actually, first things first, I would say that consistency and being seen to be consistent is really, really important. So the people that are performing well and are following the rules, if just to simplify the language, they're following the rules, they're doing really well, they have to feel that there is that consistency of approach is being applied to everybody. So that's the first thing I would say, is demonstrating that there is some consistency. I think there's something about gosh, there's so much. There's something about working with the group of underperformers to understand why that is. Is it capacity? Is it capability? You know, is it that they're in the wrong job? What is it? So there's a piece of work to do, I think, with those individuals, which has got nothing to do with how it's seen by the performers. It's actually it's about being compassionate to the people that aren't performing, because there may be some underlying issues that need to come out. And then I think the other part of it is, just demonstrating, having the conversations around, as a leader, being very transparent and having conversations about expectations, and making sure that there are conversations where you say that if there's something that needs to be applied, I'm just thinking about my own organisations a few months ago, but applying a particular policy, but not everybody adhering to that policy, I think it's a really powerful thing to demonstrate that, you know, you're doing something about people who are not following the policy. So, you know, and that's not to be not in a negative way, not in a destructive way, not in a, you know, in a really challenging way, but I think it is about having the conversations that need to happen so that they can start to see that there is some shift in those behaviours. Now, I think, you know, what that does is show to everyone as an authentic leader that you are prepared to have the difficult conversations, you're prepared to be, you know, that you are purpose driven in your approach, that you're about the organisation, not about the individual. So remember, this is, you bring it back to what you're doing and why you're there to do it, not back to what is this individual doing. And setting those clear expectations to everybody is a really good starting point, because actually when people are not meeting those expectations, then you can have those conversations about and explore why are they not having those expectations. And even if you can't share that with the people that are performing because of, you know, it's confidential, trust me, in an organization, those kinds of messages get back that those conversations have happened. So I don't know if that gives you a little bit of a way forward in terms of trying to identify some tactics that you could use.
Yes, it definitely does. Thank you so much for the answer and explaining more. I think it does require a lot of direct communication instead of just taking it around the corner and okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, so we'll go with Parth next. I'm just conscious of the time. Some students here will have a session from 2 o'clock. The MBA lessons will resume from 2 o'clock. Others can stay on. Parth, you're next.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, so this question for you personally, what challenges arise when maintaining transparency with partners and how do you overcome them? Maybe in a relationship with partners, stakeholders, and a perspective of an authentic leader in an organization. How do you personally tackle it?
So is this the question in the chat as well? So what challenges arise?
That's the one.
Yeah, that's really helpful actually putting it in the chat when maintaining transparency. I tell you the biggest challenge
you just answered the question about the transparency by giving a direct communication. In the previous question which Nurtila asked you, so this is a bit of relatable to my question.
I think one of the things about transparency is it's really scary. It's a scary thing to do. I mean, there's no doubt about it in my mind, because you feel like you are opening yourself up to lots of criticism. And I think there's something about, you know, sometimes it will work, acknowledging that sometimes it will work and sometimes it will have a positive impact and other times it won't. And I think that if you treat everything as a learning experience, then I think that there's something that you can do about, you know, keep trying and testing whether, you know, being transparent is the right way forward. So I think it is the right way forward, but whether how that works in practice. So I think something about the challenges around that are about you know, overcoming your own fear, overcoming your own sense of you know, are they going to see me in a different light? And I think that that's how you overcome that is trying and seeing and having those conversations and maybe modeling it in a smaller way with a smaller part of the organization initially before you then take it on to the organization as a whole. But transparency is critical. I can't, you know, I think an organization that isn't transparent, you know, I think it won't attract the kind of support that you would see other transparent organizations attracting. Sorry, I'm not sure I've answered your question because you had a slightly different take. So do you want to come back?
Yes, I have this question about what was the biggest challenge you faced it and you tackled it?
The biggest
Your
challenge,
perspective.
sorry, the biggest challenge I've faced in this current role
Yes,
and how I've
you
overcome
as a
it
leader. Yes.
as a leader. The biggest challenge I've faced as a leader in this organization is, I think, when I talked about our sister organization, the Royal College of Nursing, they went through some very difficult times, where there were, I always describe it as their Me Too moment, where they had an investigate. They commissioned they themselves an investigation into certain parts of the organisation, and they found some really challenging behaviours. Now, that happens. Organisations go through periods where they are not functioning effectively and are dysfunctional, if anything. And that's what was happening here. What the challenge for me was that some of the behaviours that had been brought to light were continuing at a very senior level. And actually a challenge for me was, even though it's not my organisation, even though it's an organisation we are aligned with, but it's not mine, the challenge for me was twofold. One was, how do I protect my charity? How do I protect my staff from the really difficult things they're hearing about what's going on in the wider organisation? And secondly, how do I align my own values with what's going on? Because there's a mismatch. So the leadership in that organisation at that time was not demonstrating the values that I felt were needed to be demonstrated. They weren't ethical, they weren't transparent, they weren't honest. Actually, it wasn't that they weren't that, it's what they were, which was quite destructive. So I did have to think long and hard about, do I want to still be in an environment where this is so different to my own personal values? And that was a real challenge for me. And I remember there was a Christmas a few years ago where I actually thought, right, I'm going to take the Christmas period to think about this, because I can't work in that kind of environment. So I think that how I overcame that is to start to have conversations with people that were other people within the organisation that were aligned with my values, just to try and explore, how do we start to get it back? How does it come back to where it needs to be? And that really, really helped. But also remembering why I was there in the first place. I had a job to do, and I had a job to do which was about my beneficiaries, which was about helping that nurse that was facing financial hardship because, and she couldn't afford to put food on the table. That's what it comes down to. It's about understanding why you are there to do what you're doing. So for me, that felt really important. And that's going back to the values, as an authentic leader, the values of the organisation being at the heart of everything we do. It will be different for different people. They'll deal with it in different ways. But for me, it's always about hanging on to those core fundamentals of why are you doing what you're doing? And that's whether you're in the private sector, the public sector, or the not-for-profit sector, right across.
Thank you, Deepa. Thank you,
And I
Parth.
have one more question.
Parth, we need to limit the questions here because I would like to give somebody else a chance to ask questions as well. If there are no other questions, I'll come back to you, Parth. So
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
just hang in there. But I would like
Thank
to
you,
say
Deepa,
that
for your
two
comment.
very authentic questions there, and two very authentic and values-informed decisions making scenarios that you shared. But I've got three questions that I want Parth to take away, because Parth asked us two questions. This is more like so this is more for your probably capstone project. You could work on some of the topics. Your question was about what challenges arise when maintaining transparency with stakeholders. Broadly speaking, I think that was the first question. I think one of the questions that you could investigate would be, how transparent could leaders be with stakeholders during periods of uncertainty? And there's an article that I've just shared when Deepa was delivering her talk.
Okay.
The article is titled "Chaos isn't a pit, it is a ladder. So which is on crisis leadership. The second area would be when information is incomplete. So, you could face a situation of information asymmetry. How can leaders communicate honestly without creating panic? Which is again a scenario that we quite often face. And the third question on top of my head, this was actually the first question that I had, was what are the risks of over communication or under communication in a crisis? This became more prominent during the pandemic when people were working from home. How often do you check in with your colleagues, or with your if you're in leadership role, how often do you check in with your employees? So there you go, Parth. 3 topics for your capstone project, or you could assimilate them, but it's really good questions there. Thanks for that. Do we have any other questions from other students?
Hello there. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Amanda.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Hope you're all well. Thank you, Miss Korea, for your session this afternoon and for giving your time. I have 3 questions or so. 1, please. Will we receive the slides? Will we email the slides via mass email from Dr. Rick, please? 1, 2. Will this session? Where can we access the recording for this session today? And 3. What were the 3 questions for our capstone project assignment, please? Can you, Dr. Rick, can you kindly please repeat the 3 questions for the capstone project? I didn't get them down.
No. Amanda, just to be clear, those were not questions for capstone project as such. I was following up on Parth, the 3 questions that your classmate Parth asked a few minutes ago. So I was giving him some further ideas to develop his skills in this area. So those were not suggested capstone project questions in general, okay? But you could decide to work on those questions if you want. The first question was, I think you asked about the recording and for the PowerPoint slides, which I'll be sending after the session is over. So no worries, everybody will receive the PowerPoint slide that Deepa used today, and the session is also being recorded. So I'll share that with you. But yeah, please feel free to speak with Parth if you like, especially if you're in the same seminar group. Parth, maybe you could discuss some of your ideas with Amanda. It's a bit of a peer-to-peer learning we could encourage here. Okay. Any other questions for Deepa?
Dr. Rick, sorry again. Do we access the recording via the Teams app? Is that how it works?
No, I'll share with you the recording, the link to the recording file.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah,
and
no worries.
And please, sorry, can you just please repeat that? There's 3 questions. I know you said it's not a capstone project assignment question, but it might be useful for maybe future assignments or something, please.
Okay, Amanda, is it okay if I email you afterwards, after the session ends?
That's
I'll send you the 3 questions, no problem.
Sorry, everyone, sorry for it.
No, not at all.
I think everyone have a nice evening. Thank you, Miss Korea again. And I have a question, please, Korea. How were you awarded the MBE? I'm not trying to be nosy, but I was curious. I wanted to know, please.
The short answer is somebody, and you never know as the person who receives it how you get the MBE, but somebody put in the application and then it gets reviewed by the government committee, and it gets properly reviewed, and they decide whether or not you get one, and B what you get. I think Yashada has a hand up.
Yashada, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. Sorry for the.
Sure, no worries.
Yeah. So you work across the public sector, private sector, and if you're working in nursing, the NHS, government as well. And all of these sectors each have their own culture, set of rules, protocols. So how do you balance that and still get your work done?
It's a very good question.
I don't think I can answer that in 1 minute. That is such a brilliant question. Rick, can I think about that question? Because I think that deserves, actually it deserves me to reflect on myself as well. But yeah, I and come back to you, and maybe you could circulate that to the group. But such a brilliant question about, all these different cultures, and how do we navigate those different cultures, definitely, and get our work done, as you said.
You also need to get that done. Yeah.
Is that okay? I'm sorry. I'm just conscious about time. So
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Fantastic. Thank you for asking
Thanks
that.
for that. Yeah.
Deepa, I've got a question now. I'm going to keep it brief. I mean, I'm going to keep the question brief, but you may not choose to keep the answer brief because some students may need to go, especially if you do have your MBA lessons scheduled from 2 p.m. Please do go ahead. Please don't be late. If you do not have anything resuming from 2, stay with us for a few more minutes. The question that I have is, I'm going to keep it brief. So how can leaders show vulnerability while still maintaining authority and confidence? And perhaps an example, or howsoever you would like to approach that.
So I think that's a really good question, and it's one that is always always there actually as a leader. You're always thinking about that, because vulnerability in this world, in our world, often equals, it's a bit like the compassion question, it equals weakness, or is seen as somehow weak. I would argue the opposite. I would say that actually, if you can, in certain instances where you're not sure about something, you're not sure what to do, that's an answer that you can give, because actually people need to understand that as a human being, you are in the same situation that they face. It gives them confidence that, you aren't some sort of up there or elevated on a pedestal, but actually that you are as human as the next person. And I think vulnerability actually adds value. I don't think it detracts. I actually think it adds value to your leadership skills portfolio. Your portfolio of leadership skills, I think, are very much enhanced by being somebody who demonstrates vulnerability in some situations where you are honest about, not knowing something or not feeling or responding to something in a different way. I'm trying to think of an example, because I do have examples of that all the time. And actually, weirdly, when I first started doing that, I was thinking I need to just say it, but the feedback I got was so phenomenal. I think there was once I wrote a blog. It was a blog that I was writing, and I really wasn't sure. It was my early blog writing days. Really wasn't sure that that's something that would, that it was any good. And I remember somebody saying, "Oh, it was fantastic because actually you brought your authentic self to it." And I said to them, I really wasn't sure. I really wasn't. And she, the feedback I had from her was, "I'm really glad you said that, because it shows that you are facing many of the challenges that we all face, but that you are overcoming them." So I do think vulnerability is important. I don't see it as a weakness. I actually see it as a strength.
That's also part of being authentic, isn't it? Just recognizing that reality, essentially.
Yeah. And none of this is easy. So none of the things, I'm not sitting here saying it's all it's not. So how we do it is we trial it in small ways. We try things. We try different approaches, and maybe we try them with small groups of people. So I think that's the kind of thing, and also give thought to it. Practicing something is important. Nobody's born a leader, Rick, as we know.
Okay, we could have another guest talk on that particular topic, because that's a big question out there. Are leaders born, or could you build one? Could you become one? Also, another thing that I think most of us understands in leadership position, that's nothing lasts. Nothing lasts, just like this session as well. So I'll be wrapping up soon, unfortunately, because I would love to go on for at least an hour, at least, if we could. There's so many more things I wanted to discuss with you as well. But I just want to get back to my promise. Parth, before I end the call, did you have one more question? Because I can still see you there.
Yes, I had a question, but my colleague Yashoda mentioned the same question I wanted to ask.
Well, it shows tethering, psychological tethering in a
Yeah.
peer-to-peer setting. That's good.
So
okay, all
you'll
right.
have some time to think and then get my questions
that's
answered.
okay. Sure. But I must also thank the students today, because we had some Really good questions, really good
Excellent,
questions. And
yeah.
it was a super presentation. And, it's just remarkable that you could cover such a big sort of wide ground in 35 minutes. And thanks for your generosity. I mean, the examples that you shared, the responses that you had for the students, and spending an hour, a very busy afternoon for you with us. So I'm ever so grateful. Thank you, Deepa.
Well, thank you. And it's been my pleasure actually to spend some time with you and to spend some time with MBA students. I mean, the quality of the questions tells me that all of you are taking huge amounts away from your MBA. So, credit to you really. So thank you.
Thank you, Deepa. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you. And
rest
I
of the
will
week.
come
Deepa,
back
for
with a written
invite
response
back
on the
to
question.
From Yashada.
Thank you very much for that.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you.
All right.
It was a
Take care,
wonderful
everybody.
topic.
Fabulous.
Just,
Thank you.
See you at the next
Bye.
event.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a nice day. Thank you.
You too, Amanda. Take care. Bye-bye.
And Dr. Rick, thank you for those few questions you posted in the chat for me. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Amanda. Bye for now, Deepa. We'll catch up separately, hopefully.
Lovely. Thank you.
Soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye for now. Bye-bye.